Hello everybody and welcome to UroChannel. This is Viking Penis Size Volume 2. I am standing very close to the famous Viking city Haitabu, located just outside of Schleswig, close to the Danish border. Sadly, the Viking Museum refused their permission to shoot this video on location, so I won't be able to show you any pictures of the reconstructed settlement. But I found a public replica of a runestone, and the river Schlei is very close by as well, which the Vikings traveled with their ships. In Viking times and even into the early Middle Ages, Haitabu was one of the most significant centers of trade in Northern Europe. Looking at it today, it is hard to believe that it actually was one of the first cities in this part of the world. The whole world came together here because the most important long-distance trade routes all crossed in Haitabu. Haitabu held its key position for merchandise for almost 300 years. I couldn't find a better place for my video about the smallest Viking penis on record than this ancient Viking city. If you're confused why a urologist is presenting this Nordic stuff, you might have asked yourselves why I am holding 2 doctoral degrees. One is for medicine and one is for the other subject I went to university for, and that's Scandinavian studies. So in this video I am bringing it together, urology and sexology with medieval Scandinavian literature. From the sagas of Icelanders, it is handed down to us that Grettir the Strong had a very small penis. His story can be read in Gréttis saga Ásumundarsonar, and he was the strongest man in Iceland. One of those medieval heroes the sagas tell us about. But he's a tragic hero. While in Norway, he unintentionally sets a house on fire, which leads to the killing of the people gathered inside. His punishment back home is outlawry, which is actually a death sentence in these times. I always thought how tragic the story ends with him dying of a magic wound infection after 19 years of being an outlaw. One more year and he would have been rehabilitated. Anyway, in chapter 75, Grettir swims to the farm of Reykir on Reykjanes, where he sleeps for the night. Since he is sleeping late and the household is up before him, the saga tells us the following. And when it was late in the morning, the household got up, and 2 women were the first to come into the main room, a servant and the farmer's daughter. Grettir was asleep, and his clothes had fallen off him onto the floor. They saw where a man lay and recognized him. Then the servant woman said, "Bless me, sister. Grettir Ásumundarsonar has arrived here, and he seems to me to be really well built, and he's lying here naked. But it seems to me extraordinary how small he is down below. It doesn't go with his sturdiness in other respects." The farmer's daughter answers, "Why do you talk so much? You are no ordinary fool. Be quiet." "I can't be quiet about that, dear sister," says the servant woman, "because I would not have believed it if someone had told me." Now she went over him and bent forward for a look, and then she would run back to the farmer's daughter and burst out laughing. What can be deduced from this episode are 2 things. A big man with a huge physique was also in medieval times expected to own a large penis. The fact that the servant woman laughs at Grettir's small penis shows clearly that size seemed to matter indeed in Viking times. What seems completely natural for today's standards is not something that can be assumed for all cultures and all times. We know from ancient Greece that the preference back then was a small penis. The saga continues. I spare you the details because Grettir wakes up, gets angry, and rapes the servant woman. This part of the episode is also important because here we get to know that Grettir is a grower. If you haven't watched my video on growers and showers, it might be worth doing right after this one. I think I will have to do some more explanation here. Grettir is also good at skaldic poetry. Very complicated stuff. If you were good at this and could spontaneously pull it off, let's say, in front of a king, you could earn a ship for this, which means a fortune for the standard of that time. Skaldic verse has a special element in it called kenning. One could say it is an expression for an expression for an expression. Let's take an example from the 2 verses Grettir speaks. Among others, he says, "Prepare for trouble, woman." But actually, he doesn't say woman, but Freya of the leg of the island, which equals goddess of the stone, which equals woman. In the second verse, Grettir says this: "But for a long time a small horse can grow in the forest of my young thighs." This means that his small penis will become much larger when erected, a precise description of a grower. I hope you liked the story. Hit Eurolike if you did. Subscribe, activate the bell, and read the saga yourselves. I can only recommend it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.